Approved. We'll go on to the preliminary development plan review. We have a pre-application for 2405 CUP at 1508 Dawson. I am not sure who is here to present on that item.
That is Jennifer.
We have a Jennifer here in the audience or online? Jennifer, if you're out there, you may need to hit *6 to unmute yourself. Oh, hello?
Hello?
Hi, Jennifer?
Yes, I'm here.
Oh, hi. Yeah, if you'd
Hi.
like to give us your presentation or your thoughts for your 1508 Dawson.
Okay. Yes, I'm the owner of 1508 Dawson Avenue. We've had that home since 2007 and enjoyed bringing our 5 children there for holidays and such their whole lives. And I'm trying to keep our family home. And the only way I can is to try to rent it out. I'm a dental hygienist and I can only work so many hours and clean so many teeth. So I'm at my maximum there. So I wanted to rent that out, and it's a 5-bedroom, 4-bath home. And it has a fairly long driveway with a garage. The driveway extends the length of the house and about another 15 feet of driveway to the street. It is at the end of the street, at the dead end, and I'm applying for a conditional use because of the 5 bedrooms and 4 baths. I did the fire inspection already and everything was in compliance. I did the changes and the signage and everything needed for that. I thought about reducing the occupancy. So because my time, I thought I would have to travel to all the meetings and my work schedule wouldn't have allowed that. So thank you for letting me do this via phone because I'm in Elko, Nevada. So I really appreciate that. And so I thought about reducing the occupancy because one of the bedrooms and baths is an apartment over the garage that was built to be a lockout. But I guess after the fire inspection, after you have the fire inspection, you can't make that change. It's mandatory that you just do it per how many bedrooms and baths you have. So that puts me over the occupancy. So I would like to apply for that conditional use. I had a meeting and I sent 16 letters out to my neighbors that surround me with my intent and desire to do that. And I told them the things that I wanted to do to keep the neighborhood quiet and keep the family atmosphere that I love so much about McCall. I think, the larger homes are nice because families can get together, more than one families or extended families. And I think that's in keeping with the environment of McCall, the family atmosphere. And that's what's important to me. And I like to see that in the town. And what those things are is to nightly rent and but to screen my guests personally and to allow only a 3-night minimum. I think where people get into problems with nightly rentals is when they rent for 1 night or 2 nights. That's the only drawback I've heard. So that is important to me. I usually have would require a 3-night minimum. I had a property years ago in Utah, and that seemed to keep the guests, I never had a problem with the party or anything doing that. So I keep to strictly a 3-night minimum, and posting my rules on, keeping the home and the neighborhood peaceful, and 10 o'clock sound rules, and et cetera, and the screening of my guests. And that's what I'm intending to do. And to the local meeting I had at the library in June, and I just had one neighbor attend, and I reviewed that with her, and she lives right across the street and was really satisfied with that. So that's what I would like to apply for, and was just seeking approval to continue with this application process.
Okay, thank you. Commissioners, any questions for Jennifer?
Jennifer, do you have a local property manager?
Yes, I do. Yes, and her name's Natalie Dyrud.
Okay. You said you were
And I
gonna.
also,
You said you were gonna screen clients yourself, so I just wanted to make sure there was somebody local too.
yes, and I also post her. I have her information posted as a local contact. I put a lot of signage up in my home for the rules and the parking and the fire egress from my home, and I also posted her contact numbers. So, and they know it from the reservation as well.
Hey, Jennifer, you mentioned the parking. You have enough, I haven't seen on the drawings, but you have enough off-street parking? Or are you limiting that to as many, how many cars?
Yes, I'm gonna. I also posted that in the home where to park, and that the city rule was one vehicle per bedroom. I don't think that we would need that many cars, but even so, I have a 2-car garage and room to park behind it, and room the length of the driveway. So they don't need to park on the street in front of the home.
Okay, very good. Commissioners, any other questions for Jennifer at this time? Ryan, I didn't stay at the last city council meeting, but they were discussing stuff with insurance requirements. Did that go anywhere, or is there anything we have to deal with at this point in time?
Yeah, so this, I should say, is an evolving concept so the city council meeting last week, specifically regarding this topic, if people want to limit their occupancy, they can now, once we officially, enable this feature, I guess, they'll be able to sign an affidavit swearing that they will limit the occupancy, and we will record that on the file, and they can then self-limit. I'll follow up with Jennifer on this topic.
Okay.
And then the other requirement is that all short-term rentals will have to include a certificate of insurance identifying the maximum occupancy for the given short-term rental.
Okay.
Okay,
Basically allows people to not go through CUP if they will.
they'll limit it. Just don't know if insurance companies do that, but that's a whole nother thing. That's a different thing. So, okay, Jennifer, I think unless commissioners, any other questions, Jennifer, I would say, I think you've got a lot of the things covered, and I would say continue to work with staff. Like I say, there sounds like some new information coming out that could potentially help you with that as well.
Okay,
And this-
great. I will be in touch with them and follow their schedule for, applying formally for the permit and stuff. So I really appreciate your time.
Okay, great. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Bye.
Thanks. Bye-bye.
Okay, now we'll move on to the consent agenda. Are there any items on the consent agenda that any of the commissioners would like to address and pull off the consent agenda to go over individually? All right, If there's no questions on that, I'm open for a motion.
I move to approve the consent agenda.
Second.
All right, we have a motion and a second to approve the consent agenda. All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? All right, hearing none, the consent agenda is approved. All right, now we will move on to old business. First item on old business is design review 2403 and shoreline 2401 for 1301 East Lake Street and Richard Wilmot and Matt McNulty for Brent. Oh. You can please state your name and address for the record.
Yeah.
Oh, I'm sorry. I make a motion, we open the public hearing for this item.
Second.
Motion and a second, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? All right, motion carries. All right. Sorry about that. Didn't have my note.
Thank you. My name is Jason Mao, Parsons, Bailey and Latimer, 800 Main Street in Boise. I'm here representing the Hardy. Richard Wilmot's here as well if there's any additional technical or design questions that need to be addressed. I did want to let you know that we have been working up to just minutes before this meeting as to the conditions of approval and the other items that have been listed in the staff report. I can say that we agree to all the conditions of approval. We've come to an agreement that with the neighboring party, the marina, I believe Steve Milliman, counsel for the marina, had sent a message previously that based upon these conditions of approval, if adopted, that they'll withdraw all their objections. And so there were some changes that we had asked that the city make some clarification, really, on the items that end up under after the conditions of approval. The city has listened to us. We thank you for working with us to get those clarifications. I think the newest copy of this includes some clarifications on the excavation that will take place during the season of Mile High Marina. It's been our understanding that that was always subject to this H-pile wall that will be put in place, and that the city is just making clear that any other adequate protections that need to be made before we go forward with that. So we're good with that. We're also good with the clarifications on number 2 and 3 that really is subject to a written easement agreement that's recorded with the county. So there's clarifications that have been made there, and so we're comfortable with those as well. The other items that I did want to just make sure clear for the record, the city has asked that it be added as an additional insured under number 1, for the insurance during the construction, and we're okay with that. They also have asked for, and this is the city's condition, that policy shall remain in place until the issuance of a final certificate of occupancy. So we recognize that change. We recognize that the city is requesting that, and we're okay with that.
If the city's an additional insured, who has the binder now? You guys do you
Yeah. So yeah, it's requiring us it's an environmental protection remediation insurance policy during the construction. So it's an additional policy to make sure if anything should happen to those tanks that don't be remediated.
okay.
And I think the other item was just making sure that the boundaries of the underground storage tanks are located by a surveyor prior to the permitting. We're also okay with that. So other than that, our previous 2 meetings, I think we got the opportunity to show all of our design, but if there's any other technical or design questions, Richard is here to answer those.
One other question, when do you have to drain the tanks completely when you're doing the actual construction on the building itself?
During
I
the,
just wonder what kind of season it would be when that would have to happen and
yeah, I think the main concern was that this H tile wall that we met with the marina to get the, the engineers identifying the best protection prior to any construction taking place. And this H pile wall that would be put in place, or something that is identified to be better than that, will be put in place prior to any construction. But yeah, before that can go into place, yeah, the fuel will have to be pumped out of it. And that, I think, is in condition number, or in this other number 3, or number 2, the underground storage tanks will be drained prior to commencing. And so that is in our conditions. So we want to comply with that.
Commissioners, any other questions for Jason at this point?
Still haven't addressed snow storage from what I can see.
I'll let Richard.
I think they've been.
A lot, 134. 3. The snow storage is being handled, the snow storage removal company. A contract ready in place to execute that. I think we presented that information at the last time. But I can,
It was in our packet that they were gonna be removing it. I think there was a letter of
There was
somebody.
just a letter. There wasn't actually.
But
well, we can certainly provide you with the contract, but contract with it.
Okay.
Snow removal, yeah.
the commissioners, any other questions for Jason or Richard at this point? Okay. thank you. Ryan, staff report.
All righty, thank you, Chairman Lyons. As a refresher, this is the Hardy development across the street from Mile High Marina, 1301 East Lake Street. It is a 5 residential unit with commercial space below. It's been in front of you guys a couple times now. The last meeting, we continued it to dial in the conditions of approval regarding the fuel tanks. And as discussed, that has come up until like 10 minutes before the meeting. I gave you guys a printed copy and emailed ones, the commissioners online of the revised conditions of approval. Number 2 under conditions of building permit is that they identify the city of McCall as additional insured, and then striking the phrase substantial completion of the project and replacing that with final certificate occupancy, just to be a little more clear and precise. Follow city process a little better. And then also to identify the surveyor, the location of those tanks. And then in the other conditions of approval, if the development team needs to be constructing while the marina is open, there is an ability to do so should the city engineer sign off on their protections that they are adequately keeping equipment away from the fuel tanks and fuel away from the lake. And then the language on condition number 3 is just a little more consistent with their easement agreement. So it's not dictating who is responsible for which items, because that is all outlined in the easement agreement between the property owner and marina. So with that, I will stand for any questions.
Any questions for Brian at this point? Right. To Morgan.
I don't have an updated letter for you in this packet, but they did submit new plans to me and I did review those. I just haven't gotten that letter out. But they did update their traffic impact study, and their mitigations are identified as the enhanced pedestrian facilities around the project. They're providing a larger than typical section on Fir Street and Lake Street that are consistent with our plans. for more of a pedestrian friendly zone. They are now showing the water main upgrades on their civil plans. They're showing that that their hydrant is moving to the southern property line, talking to the fire department, getting confirmation from them, I think today or yesterday. They will need to add an additional hydrant to stay within the 500-foot space. Worked out at final engineering approval though. And then the stormwater report was also updated to include the larger drainage area that we requested. And then just all the pipe sizing will just be verified in the final engineering approval. But they've worked on updating the items that I had concerns with at a preliminary level since this last review.
Okay, so there's no red flag concerns that you have at this point? Other,
Not at this point at a preliminary level. There might be items that come up as we refine the design more, but we'll work through those in that process.
okay. Commissioners, any questions for Morgan?
These propane tanks, they kind of look a little naked out here. Are there,
They're very, they haven't updated that.
you can't bury propane tanks, can you?
Yeah.
You can?
Yeah, they're supposed to be buried. They just
Really?
haven't updated the picture.
Oh, I see. Okay.
Stormwater. They upgrading that stormwater line on the north side.
Their current analysis says that there's capacity in that stormwater drain. But their initial analysis says it can handle the watershed that they're modeling. And that they're not going to they're not gonna break the capacity of the pipe
Yeah.
with their project.
What happens when property upstream like Dawson?
Yeah, that's all part of that analysis also. As long as there's capacity, there shouldn't be any backups into the streams upstream. If it's sized properly. There was a general description and capacity analysis, it's updated stormwater report.
That's your, yes.
Any other questions for Morgan at this time? All right, with that, this is a public hearing. So I'm going to remind everybody that you have 3 minutes to speak. Please state your name and address. If somebody before you says the same thing that you plan on saying, you can just say you agree with that person and without hopefully saying the exact same thing over again. And with that, we'll start with anybody online or on the phone that wishes to comment regarding this application. If you're online, or you may need to hit *6, or on the phone, you may need to hit *6 to unmute yourself. Again, anybody online or on the phone that wishes to comment? Okay, with that, is there anybody here in the audience that wishes to comment regarding this application? Don't all rush at once. Okay, once again, anybody online or on the phone? All right, hearing none, we will close the public comment. Commissioners, any other questions for staff or the applicant before we go to deliberations?
There was the northernmost driveway that moved off the property line.
I believe it's been moved off.
So that's east of it, was not have enough.
But yeah, it's been relocated off the property.
So again, that dumpster is in front of one of the sight lines to the lake, correct?
Correct.
Any other questions for staff or the applicant? All right, with that, I make a motion, we close the public hearing on this item.
Second.
Have a motion second, all in favor? Aye. All opposed? Hearing none, motion carried. All right, commissioners. They seem to have addressed majority of the items and concerns we've had, especially the fuel tanks. They seem to be, with these requirements, protected, and the city is going to be, insured against that. I think as long as they follow, obviously, these guidelines, and they're very aware that it'll be watched. So I know some concerns that level kind of blocks some of the other property, but technically it fits in that zone. There's requirements to have commercial ground floor. So it's pretty much fitting within that.
I guess my, Robert, but it's not compatible with form, line, color, and texture in its surroundings. It's a dramatic difference from the rest of the neighborhood as far as color and the amount of glass. It dramatically dominates the vistas of the water. I struggle with those first code section 37023 in that first paragraph. Bus structure should be clustered to allow visibility from the site to the lake or river. And I don't think that is being accomplished with this design.
Tony, your thoughts, or Dana, anyone
No.
else?
You don't like the color scheme of this? Is that what you're saying?
Well, when you look at the neighborhood behind, it's all wood tones and earth tones, and this is a big black monolith, black and glass monolith, especially from the uphill side. Blank wall.
I think the design's pretty interesting but I don't really have a problem with so much with the color. I know what you're talking about. And I think it's a pretty good looking building, actually. But fitting in that area where it's going to be, I don't know.
Tom, you got your thoughts? Oh, thank
Yeah,
you.
I think it's a nice looking building. And it is earth tone. Yeah, a little modern in its design, but we can't build everything to what was built in the 50s. I do think it's a nice looking building. It'll clean up that little corner really nice, especially with the pavers and the planters and that. So to me, aesthetically, it looks nice.
Yeah, I agree with Tom. I understand that it doesn't look exactly the same as what's currently in the neighborhood, but I think it does reflect a more modern take on kind of a mountain kind of vibe. So it definitely doesn't bother me.
Yeah, I mean, I think like that, we're gonna continue to see newer buildings, and like you say, we can't really, if it fits within parameters, I mean, it's hard for us to deny certain aspects of it. There's new buildings that are gonna happen. And when it's in the central business district, there's some extra things that it has to do, requirements of, again, commercial space that, they have to try to fit in there. Actually, a smaller building that has They've been approved there years ago that never got built, or it was preliminary approved. This is actually smaller than that, which really doesn't affect anything now, but there could have been something much bigger than this there a few years ago if the market hadn't crashed. So, but I mean, it's definitely bigger than what's there, but I think it's a nice addition, and I think with some of the public space around it, you are gonna have some buffering from the lake with the marina as you're looking towards that way already, so for that area, I can see it kind of working.
My clarification, Brian, are these design requirements for development the same as CUP requirements that they all must be? No.
Well, you must find affirmatively in all the requirements for shoreline review and design. And the commercial zone design.
Any other?
I think it meets it, but that's my vote, so you guys get a vote.
That's, anybody would like to make a motion?
Sure. I move to approve design review 2403 and shoreline review 2402 with the staff recommended conditions of approval.
Second. We have a motion and a second to approve. Brian, let's do a roll call vote.
Commissioner Lyons,
Yes.
Commissioner Moss,
Yes.
Commissioner Petty,
No,
Commissioner Rock,
Yes.
Commissioner Millfield,
Yes.
Commissioner Pop.
Yes.
All right, motion carries. Item has been approved. Okay, thank you. All right, we'll move on to new business. We go to design review 24-12, 613 North Third Street. I make a motion, we open the public hearing on this item.
Second.
Have a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Right, motion approved. We got for Mike Hormachia. Mike, give.
Okay, good evening, Mr. Chairman and Commissioners. Mike Formerchia, 701 West 13th in Boise. And here to request a modification to recently approved design review application for the Idaho and Ward Apartments to make some adjustments to the site and building plan for the purpose of improving the building site locations. We shrink our total building footprint a bit and increase areas for stormwater retention and snow storage.
I could not get your thing open.
Oh, really?
And I-
Okay.
Time to talk.
All right. Well, we'll talk through it. I mean, you have the package of information. So I'll walk through kind of a quick summary of the changes. Previously approved, the project was a 4-building layout with 125 apartments and 185 parking spaces. It was just shy of 38,000 square feet of landscaped open area and about 16,500 square feet of snow storage. That was what was original. Before you today, we consolidate the buildings from 4 into 2 buildings. We did pick up an apartment, so 126 instead of 125. We lost 2 parking spaces, so we're at 183. But importantly, we gained landscaped open space. We went from 37,931 up to 46,510. And we picked up an additional almost 2,000 square feet of snow storage, up to 18,100 feet. Additionally, I don't have, oh yeah, that's a good one. So really gaining some efficiencies in the building footprints. And gaining some, we felt like we were a bit on the edge of our snow storage in particular. So we opened up the site a bit doing this. The main change was we opened this central area. This was really more located here. So it's bigger, central. We think from a snow storage access, getting to it and pushing to it, that will be better. a couple anecdotal comments and apologies to the commissioners that are on the call as I'm pointing to the screen here. We did have a building here that was adjacent to or backed up to Brunel Tire. You know, talking with Craig Brunel, we had some concerns about kind of resident and conflicts up against the tire store. So I think as a sort of secondary benefit, moving homes from backing right up there probably is good. Similarly, we had a building over here that backed up to our single family neighbors, but pulling away a multifamily project a little further away from that property boundary, I think has some overall site benefits. Aside from that, the new L-shaped building, I mean, it replicates the L-shaped building you saw in the original DR application. There's a few other renderings of the new layout. Few items, no changes to any of the code or comprehensive plan compliance from our previously approved applications. No change to our local housing or long-term rental commitments from the previously approved applications. And we believe the overall scale is still compliant for the location downtown. And our landscape being adequate, and basically all the other design characteristics we believe are consistent with what you previously approved. I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Well, it's remaining the way it's showing here with the covered parking. That's
Correct.
for most of it. I see there's a few areas that are not, but most of it's.
Yeah. It's for every apartment unit, for one per unit.
Commissioners, any other questions for Mike at this time?
I'm sorry, did I hear that correctly? It's one covered spot per unit?
Correct.
Awesome, thank you.
Any other questions for Mike at this time? Gilby. Okay, Brian, staff
Not
report.
going anywhere.
All right, thank you, Lions, Commissioners. This was previously approved as part of PUD 2301. They got to work on figuring out how they're actually going to build it. They need to make some changes, and so they're back through design review to modify the site design. As discussed, it is no longer 4 buildings, instead 2 L-shaped buildings. That's obviously going to add some building massing because it's densing it a little bit, but it also, adds a little more buffering, moves more of the green space around the outside. Once the future commercial sites are developed, pretty much all the parking is going to be screened from the roadway, which is a win. Overall, still generally meets the design standards. And then, the conditions of approval are all the conditions of approval that were included in the previous amendment. And with that, I will stand for any questions.
Commissioners, any questions for Brian?
With the additional mass, is there more screening that's gonna happen? Just seems like,
As far as the landscaping,
Yeah.
it's not substantially different. The locations of the landscaping relative to the adjoining properties is a little bit different, and buildings themselves are more separated. Landscaping from building to the existing developed neighborhoods around it. That makes sense.
the neighbor on the south. It's kind of, maybe it's just the drawing, but it looks like somebody's overlapping a property line there.
Here? That's just the rendering. That's the May Hardware storage and the saw shop. But or the backside of McCall Brewing, I guess that's that building. But it's the angle you're looking at it.
Okay. It's the,
Which direction is the tire store?
That's right here.
Oh, that's it right there? Oh,
This is
okay.
the road coming across from KB Burritos.
Okay, yeah. Direction now, thanks, Robert.
the existing house is down there. It's probably just surrendering.
There is a site plan looking at from the top that
Any other questions for Brian at this time? All right, Morgan.
Hello. So since we saw this project last at planning and zoning, a few things have changed on the traffic side. In between city council and planning and zoning, we worked through some traffic issues and there are now only proposing access on Third Street. The access that was previously on Washington, the emergency access and pedestrian only. So it'll have a that cut through traffic. Some of that design needs to be finalized still, which is in one of my comments, but it should be less impactful to the homeowner at 600 Ward Street from initial looks of it. So that's one of the main comments that is changed. The traffic study just needs a few minor revisions to just adjust for the change in the site plan, but it shouldn't substantially change from what is already in there. The stormwater design, I have similar comments as before during the final design. We need to work on the sizing and the evaluation of the stormwater pipe that currently cuts through the property. We gave a few options to the applicant team. One includes lowering the elevation of the stormwater outlet in Third Street, which they're going out into Third Street anyways for sewer and water improvements. So that's one of the options ahead of them. Other discussions we've had recently is water meter sizing for the buildings. I don't know if you care too much about what size meters they'll have, but that's in the works. And that's basically all the updates that I have on this project. If you have any questions, let me know.
But with,
Review traffic study.
There was an updated traffic study at the end of March this year. So it's updated to reflect that there's only one access onto Third Street, but there's a few references that still look like they reference that both accesses will be there. But the data has been analyzed with it only taking access, the residents only taking access off of Third Street.
Turn lane.
There is a two-way left turn lane down Third Street, which is the center. Yeah,
you don't have any concerns that everything coming out that one driveway will be an issue?
they will probably get a little congested, but I believe they were within the proper levels of service. Eventually, we have to work through a signalizing plan for Third Street, which we plan on doing with the RAISE grant that we got with ITD to analyze the whole corridor and how that comes together with our future projected traffic for the entire downtown area and town.
Commissioners, any other questions for Morgan? All right, with that, we'll go to the public comments. Anybody online or on the phone that wishes to comment regarding this application? And you may need to hit *6 if you're muted. Anybody here in the audience wish to comment regarding this application? One last time, anybody on the phone or online that wishes to comment? All right, we'll close the public comment section. Commissioners, any other questions for staff or the applicant regarding this application?
Said there was a garage for every,
No covered parking.
or covered parking. Okay, not a, okay, I see what you're talking about.
Mike, I guess I got one question on the, and I'm sure you've been progressing, but just curious, you've been able to come to or close to coming to an agreement with the sewer district on whatever they're requiring to be able to service?
So yes, so we have a draft development agreement with the sewer district that includes some offsite improvements. So we've plugged in estimates for that into our development cost budget. Working through some kind of the details of their connection fee analysis, but We have the agreement roughed out and we have it integrated into findings of facts of our development agreement with the city in this application, as far as timing of issuance of the sewer permit versus the building permit.
Okay. Okay, great.
Yeah.
So that sounds like it's moving forward.
Yeah.
Good enough.
Yep.
You're not concerned? Too
No,
concerned?
I mean, they've stated they have the capacity to service. Of course, again, a couple offsite improvements. So as long as we can figure out how to pay for all that, we'll be off and running.
Okay.
What's Mike, what's the lighting like around here where the covered parking is? Like out in this area right here?
Lighting?
Yeah,
Oh, like parking lot lighting?
yeah.
So Commissioner Moss, to be fair, I don't have a parking lot lighting plan, detailed yet.
I
That'll
think in the wintertime gets dark pretty early, you know?
Sure. So I'm sure we will have some parking lot lighting. I don't have that in front of you, but I would expect that to be done in part with our final civil work and construction drawings. So we'll
Okay.
have a chance to go through Public Works and the building department for their final review before prior to issuing of building permits. But yeah, I'm
Okay.
sure that we'll need for safety, security, parking lot
Yeah.
lighting to get people in and out of the buildings to their cars.
I agree. I agree. Okay.
And I'm sure there'll be.
And so that's forthcoming then when you get farther into the project.
Yeah, I would expect that as part of our construction drawings and building permit application.
Okay.
Curious what your soil testing told you differently than what you thought was there. The property's been there for a while, right?
Yeah,
Is there-
yeah, it was bad news
Too.
across the board. Yeah, no hazardous materials. And we've done now a couple of environmental site assessments. So it's not a hazardous soil issue. It's, they found unsuitable soils for construction, basically organics. It appears that there was a considerable amount of fill pushed onto that property 60, 70, 80 some years ago, long time ago. So we're just, trees and stumps and bushes. And so some of it's broken down, some of it hasn't. Probably pushed over a few old chimneys and just a little bit of just debris. So the engineer team we have sort of plan A and plan B of how to construct around that. The primary issue with the organic unsuitable fill is risk of settling when you go put these bigger buildings on there. But yeah, I mean, I think the mobile home park was there for 60 years and we didn't have any settling, but bigger buildings, bigger structure, bigger loads. So bigger calculations on how to address it. So we have a game plan mapped out. We're still trying to find the least costly solution. Unfortunately, none of them are cheap, but we're working on it.
So you don't expect to come back and have to redo this again?
I hope not. No, I certainly hope not. No, our desire is still to build it as we've shown you. But given the soil challenges, sort of consolidating the footprints, soil was a little better on the south end, so it made some sense to put more footprint there. But we've got some work to do on that. But in process.
All right, commissioners, thank you, Mike. Any other questions for Mike or staff before we close the public hearing?
Is the secondary access on this, on the southeast side of the project, that's only a service road and pedestrian? Did I understand that correct?
With that would avoid additional traffic on the Colorado intersection that there was concern with, as well as going through the neighborhood behind there.
Sure. And then the entry road off of Third, that's only a two-lane road in and out. I'm sorry, did you say something?
Yeah, as currently designed, it is 3 lanes.
I'm curious how far out, this is a question for Morgan, how far out that the study that you mentioned, the corridor study, is that a 5 or a 10 10-year?
So we have a few reports. We did our own report in general of the south and of town with Horrocks, and that was adopted in December of last year. And that kind of looked at some of the intersections on Third Street also that suggested that signalization will be needed in the future. And that I believe was looking at a 2040 year. And then the RAISE grant is current right now. Have been working with ITD right now on getting that going. So it should be the next few years that we'll have that whole study done. And a corridor design.
It's a signaling dependent on ITD.
Yes. Partially, yeah. It's a collaboration.
Any other questions for staff or the applicant at this time?
Is there a way to make that 2 lanes to at least get a right turn lane onto Third?
Sorry, what's the question?
Is there a way to make that, or at least give it a right turn lane onto Third?
For people
Going over.
exiting
Yeah.
our property on the Third? Yeah, I think there's room there. When we remodeled it with the traffic engineers, I mean, it's come way within acceptable levels of service. So they didn't have concerns about sort of wait times. But yeah, there is some room there.
That's except for some, yeah. Okay. Thank you.
Sure.
Any other questions before we close public hearing? All right, I make a motion that we close the public hearing on this item.
Second.
Motion and a second, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Okay, deliberations. Commissioners, thoughts? I'm looking at, I think I like the 2 and more than the 4. It definitely gives it some more open feel. The first L, let's call it the backward L. I mean, it's really kind of going to be hidden back there. There's some other projects that could be in front of it that are really going to, we won't even hardly see it back there, especially with the terrain. So I think it's nicer with the buffer from some of the other housing, as you mentioned. The road, I just think it flows better, more open space, especially farther back from the road, because otherwise that first building would have been right behind Brunel and kind of right there. So I pushed back so any views that you may pick up of the mountains that way is you're still going to be able to see them, or a little bit of them. So I personally like the change.
Yeah, I agree. I think it, just its relationship to the adjacent properties, it seems like it's a better fit.
Certainly cleaned it up a lot, that's for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah, I
do
still
wonder-
think it's, oh, go ahead.
Oh, I said I do wonder about access to Third Street. I know they say it's, within their parameters. It just seems, I like the idea of a free running right, but there's a fair amount of queuing there. I don't know. I guess time will tell, and hopefully, a new corridor study will take that. I just kind of have in my mind, this 4th of July and this busy time of year that we have. Seems like it's kind of hard to get in and out anywhere. So that's it.
Yeah, for my 2 cents, it's, 2 big buildings. But in order to get the kind of housing that we need, it's the kind of design that we need to be supportive of. And I think in that context, I agree that I like the 2 Ls better. I think it opens up the space a little more. And yeah, I'm in support.
Kind of shows off that common area right here. That's grass, obviously, next to the 2 carports, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Makes that look a lot nicer.
A bigger area for, summertime for the kids and stuff too, I think.
Yep.
Dana, do you have some thoughts?
I agree with everything everyone's saying. It looks a lot less congested, more open space. So I think it looks a lot cleaner.
Questions?
Got everything?
Yep.
All right, unless there's any other comments or thoughts, concerns, I'm open for a motion.
I move to approve DR 2412 with staff recommendation, condition of approval.
A second.
You have a motion and a second. All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Hearing none, motion carries. All right, thank you. Okay. Now we'll move on to PUD 2204, CUP 2204, design review 2206, and scenic route 2204. For to be determined Elo Road. I make a motion, we open a public hearing.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, open the hearing. We have Jeff Hatch or Steve Wilson here to, whoever would like to.
Design architecture, address 200 West 36th Street, Boise, Idaho, 33714. Good evening, Chairman Lyons and Commissioners. Thank you for your reconsideration of our plan unit development. Good evening. Can everybody hear me? Okay. Next slide. A couple months, and we want to recap. So we have highway and Elo roads, the logging company on the west, church to the south, church and a storage facility to the north, as well as an animal shelter. We have 120-foot wildlife easement to our direct east, then Sampson Trail, and then some residential properties far east. Next slide. To recap the changes from our last presentation to this current presentation, the main emphasis that we've spent time on is really groundwater monitoring, which you have the land group here to speak to more thoroughly, and then the traffic study. So from the full traffic study, the commissioners wanted us to go actually topographically survey the interstate and Elo Road to evaluate the sight lines for pulling trailers, pulling recreational vehicles on that highway, and rendering if there are any safety recommendations. Presenting that to transportation, have coordinate with our traffic engineer in order to render some recommendations and evaluations for both Elo Road, Sampson Trail, and the highway. What they came back with was item number 5, which is really the only additional amenity here would be a proposed right turn lane and also some improvements to that intersection. Next slide. And then there has been some modifications to the frontage for that decel lane based on those planting improvements. We were still the understanding from the staff report that we're meeting the McCall area of impact landscape guidelines. Next slide. A brief summary of the traffic study. To mitigate the increase of recreational vehicles and emergency vehicles as well, because we do have a proposed fire station on this property. The northbound right turn movement for Highway 55 along Elo Road would be better warranted with a northbound right turn lane of 340 feet improvement and a taper of 180 feet. And so that is what was visually represented on that other slide. With that, they feel that sufficient sight lines exist and that this would allow for emergency vehicles to enter and exit the roadway on Elo Road. The provisions of a traffic signal or use of emergency signals at this time is not required. Intersection of Elo Road and Highway 55, but that was evaluated. Next slide. far as city engineer traffic comments, we did have some coordination in regards to our traffic report and then following up on how our traffic engineer responded to that. We did have a coordination meeting with Morgan and Brian, basically trying to get feedback as far as you have winter recreational vehicles, you have summer recreational vehicles, you have the school year, you have essentially a range of different scenarios that could happen on this. And so evaluating those was something that was important. And so we had to go back out and do additional traffic counts on the intersection of Elo Road and State, as well as on the State Highway 55 and on Elo and Sampson Trail, both on weekdays and weekends, in order to generate more sufficient traffic count. In addition to that, there was some clarification as far as the growth rate and how that was evaluated. And so the clarification of that is we're actually being additionally conservative above the 4%. And then as far as the discussion of the right turn lane, from our response from ITD, it was evaluated that we would be providing sufficient capacity for both Highway 55 and also that transition to Elo Road. Next slide. So from that coordination, we do have the staff requirements. You can see on this highlighted item here, they will be requiring a right turn lane for Highway 55 onto Elo Road. And then they declare that that has to be a 350-foot lane, and then also have a 180-foot taper. On the next exhibit here from Horrocks, which is the city's third-party engineering reviewer, on the paragraph that is highlighted, says, I agree with their findings that this is a relatively low number of trips used for two existing driveways. There will be a small increase of traffic on Elo Road 55 due to the expansion, but should be manageable, should require additional mitigation. And I will skip the next slide and come back to the next. As far as the comments from our last hearing, we had kind of four primary ones in regards to ground water levels. We did install a series of ground monitoring devices last fall, and that is still being monitored today. I'll let the land group speak to that in greater detail. As far as our Idaho Department of Transportation requirements, they have reviewed the traffic study and agreed to the additional right turn lane design. As far as traffic goes and the concern for traffic, a full traffic study has now been performed. As stated in the study and as stated by the third-party city engineer, the expansion of the facility will have very little impact on traffic. And then lastly, as far as compatibility, having commercial properties essentially on three sides of us, we feel that the use is compatible with this area. Next slide. Back one slide. Back one slide. Thank you. And then we did want to recap the future land use objectives as well. Looking through that, we feel that the current project encourages affordable housing, creates an urban growth buffer that surrounds the McCall area to preserve open space, especially with that wildlife corridor that we're proposing, or a connected and open space network, which would be the pathway which they're currently improving on Sampson Trail, and we would be proposing to expand that both on Sampson Trail and Elo. Plan for opportunity to support economic diversity and local jobs. Storage can do that both from a housing standpoint, but also from an industry standpoint. And then locating industry, warehousing, logistics, manufacturing, an adequate location for transportation. And with that, I will transition to the land group, let them take over for the balance of the slide.
Lacey Myers, and I'm the civil designer for this project. I'm stepping in for Jim Goot, who's the civil engineer on this project. So on this slide, we have utility and drainage, and This hasn't changed too much since the beginning of this process. We'll still be collecting drainage on the expanded area of the site via surface runoff to valley gutters, and it'll be transported over to the existing swale on the west side of the site. The existing swale, we've analyzed its capacity, and it's big enough to contain the 100-year storm for the entire site, the existing and the proposed expansion area. Should be noted that the city of McCall requirements are to detain the 10-year storm for stormwater, and we have ensured that this swale will detain the 100-year storm, and that'll have a foot of freeboard as well. The site for utilities will have a septic system and a backup, so drain field and a backup drain field for the fire station and the office. And Highway 55, the new right turn lane expansion, that water will not go on site. That's going to be collected in ITD's roadside swale. And, that will be designed per ITD standards. Next slide, please. For the groundwater monitoring, Atlas has been performing groundwater monitoring, and there's the original geotech report that had a site plan and different test pits. The groundwater monitoring is based off of their new site layout with test pits 1 through 4. So based off of their monitoring on the east side of the site, they are highest groundwater levels that we've seen have been just shy of 9 feet, so 8.9 feet in depth there, 9.5 in the northeast corner.
Have a year, what during the year, when was that?
Just in June, the middle of June is when we've received the last data, but we've been getting data weekly.
Okay.
So, and I believe we have data from July as well, and I believe we sent that in to the city. I know that this graph is kind of hard to view, but Atlas's groundwatering report, I believe we sent their latest data to the city. And then the 6-foot depth that we've seen is over in this existing swale area, and we don't propose any additional excavation there or any work. We're leaving the swale in the east or the west side of the site as is. So where the groundwater is shallow, we won't be affecting that area. On the east side of the site, we're constantly checking the groundwater levels as they come in, and we will continue to adjust our grading to verify that the building footings do not conflict with the groundwater. So that's still an ongoing process, and grading will, be finalized with construction documents and with the full year of groundwater monitoring. Next slide. This is the site grading profile. The top is the profile of the entire site from State Highway 55 all the way to the Sampson Trail. And then this bottom profile is a zoomed in portion of just the new path, the expansion area of the site. And so this kind of gives you an idea of where groundwater is relative to the buildings going in on our finished floor and finished grades, the expansion area. So again, we're constantly making sure as we get the new groundwater data that the buildings, the footings, the grading does not encroach into the ground.
Looks like you got water running uphill.
Groundwater does tend to follow the topography of.
Okay.
Next slide. And through the process, we've received city comments on our plans, on the drainage report and the traffic analysis. And as of this last Tuesday, we sent the comments and our responses to Morgan. These are just some of the examples of ones that we received, but the city has we responded to all comments, and if there are any in particular that you need more information on, want us to expand on further, we're definitely happy to do that. That. It's just questions.
How did we get here? I think I just saw this on YouTube a couple of days ago. I've been absent for the last couple of meetings, and you guys made the same presentation down to the Valley County Commissioners here within the last month, I guess?
It was actually 3 months ago.
Okay, well, I haven't been gone that long, but yeah, I haven't been keeping up with it as much as I should, but I guess I'm wondering why are we doing this here with us again?
Commissioner Moss, based on the additional traffic study information, the groundwater monitoring that we actually got postponed till beginning of May to provide that information to you. So we, since the commission asked us to do that in July, August of last year, to do the groundwater monitoring and provide all that information back to this commission for your review.
But you did it with the county commissioners, and did they approve it, or did they like it? Or, I mean, and you're doing it with us again here. I mean, that would tell me that maybe they didn't like it, or maybe that you have another option to go here as far as getting it through McCall planning and zoning as opposed to the Valley County Commissioners. Is that a fair estimate?
Commissioner Moss, I didn't take it that way. I took it as they wanted this new information to be presented to McCall planning and zoning and get your take on the additional information.
Okay, I just curious how it goes. And I get
Chairman Lay.
Yeah, I was just.
Jeff, you mind if I interject?
Sure.
So this, if you're seeing Jeff here on the YouTubes of the Valley County Board of Commissioners talking about storage units in the last couple of months, it was probably about the other one on Sampson Trail that he's representing. This one was last in front of the county commissioners in October of 2023 with the request that they monitor groundwater through the winter along with some other items. Now we're going back through the process as requested by the county.
I'm fine. It's nice to get all this information. Yeah, okay.
Commissioner Moss, we've been gathering stuff for about 8 months.
Okay.
Information for you.
Oh, well, go ahead. I guess so. I got.
Not much has changed really since it got denied by this board before I was on it, right? Other than some turn lane and some additional landscaping along 5. It's still on 2 scenic routes, Sampson and Titus, please.
He's not.
It's still on there are 2 scenic routes that you're in between.
Mr. Petty, we are on 2 scenic routes, and being on 2 scenic routes similar to the improvements that are currently going on north of Cron Lane along Sampson Trail. We are proposing pedestrian pathway area of Elo Road from Highway 55 to Sampson Trail, as well as continuing that improvement south of our property along Sampson Trail.
But it doesn't really address you come on those giant massive storage buildings on a scenic route. That part hasn't changed.
The proposed scope of the project has been reduced since the beginning of our proposal and discussion with you, incorporating that additional wildlife corridor that was in front of you last year. This commission.
Any other questions right now for Jeff or Lacey, commissioners?
The turn lane you're talking about, is the turn lane going north towards McCall, or is it, how's that work? Because the road, they're gonna widen the road and they put a turn lane in there so you can turn onto Elo Road, correct? Coming from Boise. That's the way it works?
Commissioner Moss, and it's your question, go back to the site plan, towards the beginning. One more. There we go. This gray highlighted area is the area that Idaho Department of Transportation has requested be improved. So that would widen the highway to get vehicles that are slowing down with trailers off, or emergency vehicles for the fire station off of the highway to maintain traffic flow on the highway, and then allow them to decelerate onto Elo Road.
Okay.
Tom, did you have a question?
So, well, yeah, but I have a couple of questions. So you're saying there's a deceleration lane on the northbound state highway 55? That's point number 5, right? You'll build that piece. Is that what you're saying?
Yes, Commissioner, that would be our intent.
Okay. I'm really curious about the water table and the east side of the site, because it looks to me, I'm curious about what the existing grades are, and then your proposed footing elevation, bottom of footing elevation, which would be ostensibly a couple of feet below your finished floor elevation. You had a really good graphic, this one right here. I mean, it sounded to me in the presentation that these elevations were somewhat fluid, because you are concerned about being so close to the water table. It seems to me that you're right there. You're going to be in the water table. And now I think about our neighbors to the east, the Strodes, and everybody that's right there close by. And what impact does that have once you knife into that water table? Kind of what's happening, because what I see is a ledge that where it's where your landscape area is, and it's a nice huge landscape area, but then it cuts down, and then your foundations will cut down even further into that. And so I'm concerned about how it sits on the site and the water table, and its impact to the kind of the greater area once you get down in there. Do you know what your footer elevation would be, and what that existing elevation is at the wildlife corridor?
Yes, Commissioner, the grading right now is allowing, this profile is showing the highest groundwater elevations that have been recorded by Atlas so far. And the grading as of right now is ensuring that the footings of the buildings will not be in the water table due to scale. This profile can look like where the footings are going to be sitting in the water table, but we've graded the site such that the water table is at least 3.5 feet below finished ground, and the bottom of the footings of the building will be 2 feet below the finished ground, or the finished floor of the buildings. So we do not intend to enter the water table whatsoever with this design. Our intention is to stay out of it.
Sure. I just know, intentions, but where we end up there. If you're at a finished floor elevation of 5102, what is the water table at that point?
The gray line, there's like a gray dashed line that's kind of going across the building that represents the existing grade of the site.
Mm-hmm.
The water table at that end of the site has been at a maximum, so worst case, 9.5 feet from the existing grade. We have the actual numbers in the geotech report, and I can move this out.
Yeah.
The groundwater model.
It just feels like you're really close. You're really close there. I mean, how tall is that building? Is it 12 feet tall from finished floor?
The eve height of that building would be 9 feet.
9 feet. Yeah, it just kind of feels like, and I know this is just schematic, but it feels like that gray line, you know, if that's a 9 foot, 10-foot building, you're probably 3-4 feet. And then you're another probably 2-3 feet to get to your footer elevation. And then you're at water. And then the remedy likely raise that building, which is then now you're kind of going away from how it views how that building looks from the road. And anyways, that's my concern, is that where these buildings and their structure going down, you know, into that water table, and then, you know, what impact that has.
And as it's designed right now, the footings of the buildings are not within the water table, and will continue to watch what Atlas, the information that Atlas sends us, and go from there.
Where's test pit 3 in the plot? Like in March of 2024, it was at 6 feet.
How much does the water table vary year to year? Like say December, what it?
Well, let her finish one, Tony.
Excuse me, I'm sorry.
Sorry, go ahead with, yeah, one at a time.
Okay, 24.
In the original geotech report, Atlas labeled test pits, test pit 1 through test pit 10, I believe. When they originally started doing the groundwater monitoring, they relabeled test pit 3, test pit 1 for their new site plan. So if you, on this site plan, test pit 1 is test pit 3 in Atlas's original geotech report.
And where's 1 on that map?
1 is here over in this.
Yeah, go ahead if you need it.
Is the original map. Originally, Atlas kept these labels when they were doing the test bits, and then we since asked them to fix their labeling.
So do we have, so in this June 20 or May 24th letter only talks about 3 and 4. We don't have any of this data.
This, if in the new data, is test pit 1. I believe it's 1, 2, 3, and 4.
Tony, you have a question?
My question how much does it vary all year long? Does it go up to 9, or excuse me, go down to 9 feet and then go up to 6, or is it vice versa, or I mean, it seems like wintertime, the groundwater level would be higher, but that's just my speculation.
Typically groundwater is higher in the spring and early summer
Okay.
because of the snow runoff.
Yeah, okay.
Everything. So for example, for test pit 4 on this graph up in the northeast corner, it varied from 15 feet below finished ground or existing ground to 9.5. So it so far this year has varied from about 6 feet. And we're still collecting data because you want, the full.
And you've been doing this, collecting data for a year, you say? Or longer?
Collecting data since October of 2023.
Okay.
So from October through about April, it stayed pretty constant. And then once spring hits, once that snow runoff starts hitting, the groundwater climbs, and we try to find that peak, and that's the value that we use to set our grading and ensure that we're not cutting into the groundwater. So again, we're still, Atlas is still collecting data. It looks like we had hit the peak in test pit 1. We're, waiting to see what test pit 9 as we finish off the green.
All right, commissioners, any other questions for Jeff or Lacey at this point? Okay, thank you for now. All right, Ryan, staff report.
Alrighty, thank you very much. So. The house cleaning before we get started. The application was updated pretty substantially on this one a couple days ago.
Last night.
A couple days ago.
No interruption.
There was an error on our end at Myers Cross on what was included in the packet. If you guys do not feel that you have had adequate time to review it and gather the information you need, it's perfectly acceptable to continue it on to a future public hearing. So with that, this one has been in front of you guys quite a bit. This is PUD 2204, CP DR 2206, and SR 2204 for self-storage units on Elo Road. This was pre-app to you guys way back in October of 2021. The neighborhood meeting on this occurred in December 2021. The original application submittal was in February 2022. It was in front of you guys on April 5th of 2022, June and 2022, and then again on January 10th. The application was recommended for denial at that time to the Valley County Board of Commissioners. We then had hearings on April 3rd and June 20th of 2023. The decision at that time was to deny the application. There was a request for reconsideration, which was heard in October of 2023. At which point they decided to remand it back to the Planning and Zoning Commission with a request for additional information on groundwater monitoring, traffic study, and landscaping. So we have opened public hearing, heard from the applicant. Now it is staff's turn. Then we'll open the public comment period. There will be an opportunity for the commission to request additional information or witnesses. Then the applicant can rebut. There'll be one more round of questions available. Then we'll close the public hearing, deliberate, then make a motion I recommend to the Valley County Board of Commissioners. This is a conditional use permit and planning development and design review and secret review for storage units. I did not change the text on that from the other thing. It is substantially larger than that in all categories, and it is zoned RE residential estates, not community commercial. I apologize. You are the deciding body on the design review and scenic route elements. The recommendation to Valley County Board of Commissioners will be for the plan unit development and initial use permit. So as stated from the prior hearings, the site plan and design of this application has not changed substantially. The request from the county commissioners was more information on groundwater, traffic, and landscaping. So the groundwater, they have done monitoring through the spring thaw and adjusted their grading plan accordingly. It is now higher than it used to be, which is good that they're not putting buildings in the groundwater anymore. But anytime that goes up, it is going to raise the elevation prominence of the structures, both from the Highway 55 side and the trail side. The traffic study, we'll let Morgan speak to that in her review. And then the landscape plan includes appropriate bushes, so it seems to be in conformance with the scenic route requirement. So in order to grant approval of design review, let's find that it is in conformance with the comprehensive plan, does not jeopardize the health, safety, or general welfare of the public, conforms to applicable requirements of the zoning ordinance and subdivision ordinance as required, not have a substantial impact on adjacent properties or the community at large. Scenic route zone, so you must find that it will preserve and enhance the scenic quality of the street or highway. Will not block or disrupt visibility of significant views or features. Be compatible in terms of setback, height, bulk, dimension, finish, material, signing, and landscaping with immediate surroundings and the desired visual quality of the scenic route. Then grant a PUD recommendation of approval. You must find that the underlying zoning and other applicable regulations have been met unless specifically requested by this PUD. The specific modification on this one is maximum lot coverage in the residential estate zone is 10% for a lot this size. They're substantially exceeding that with all the paving and structures. The proposed uses shall not be detrimental, and I missed the other one is that there are blank balls on street signs. The proposed uses shall not be detrimental to present and potential surrounding uses, nor shall they be detrimental to the health, safety, and general welfare of the public. The physical features of the site, public facilities, and existing adjacent developments and uses shall be considered. Any variation from basic zone requirements must be warranted by the design amenities incorporated into the preliminary and final development plan. The amenities proposed in this one are the fire station and the enhanced pathways and extra buffer along Sand Street. The planned development must meet the general objectives of the McCall Area Comprehensive Plan. Existing and proposed streets and utility services must be suitable and adequate for the proposed development. A development agreement may be required. The PUD may be proposed in conjunction with the zoning comp plan, which they're not doing at this time. So move on to conditional use permit. The application must constitute conditional use in the zone involved, which it is in the residential estate zone. Be harmonious with and in accord with the general objectives and any specific objectives of the comprehensive plan and or this title. Be designed, constructed, operated, and maintained to be harmonious and appropriate in appearance with the existing or likely character of the neighborhood, and that such use will not change the essential character of the surrounding area. Not be detrimental to the health, safety, and general welfare of persons residing or working in the neighborhood of such proposed use. Not cause any substantially harmful environmental consequences to any land or waters within the planning jurisdiction. Not create excessive additional public costs for public facilities and services, and will not be detrimental to the economic welfare of the community. Be adequately served by essential public facilities, including highway, streets, police and fire, drainage, refuse, water and sewer, and schools. Not involve uses, activities, processes, materials, equipment, or conditions of operation that will cause unreasonable production of traffic, noise, smoke, fumes, glare, odors, or other forms of pollution. Not result in the destruction, loss, or damage of an important, natural, scenic, or historic feature. And be on site of sufficient size to accommodate the proposed use, including yards, open spaces, snow storage, walls, fences, parking areas, loading zones, and design standards applicable. And have a minimal negative economic impact on the neighborhood or surrounding community. With that, I'll stand for any questions.
Commissioners, questions for Brian?
What was the majority of documentation that came in the last 2 days? Groundwater studies?
The groundwater monitoring was the bulk of the change.
And it seemed quite extensive.
It was,
Have you had a chance to
yes,
dive into it?
Well, there was a bunch of traffic studies too, weren't there?
there was additional traffic information included in the packet as well.
Yeah.
Any other questions for Brian?
So there's a new pathway, the new Valley County Pathways is on Sampson on this side of the road. Is that he's part of the 120 feet?
Yes, the existing or the pathway that is currently under construction, the stretch along the frontage of the site would be improved to a higher standard.
One more question about the traffic study. Did you have any revelations there or things changed very much or from what you saw?
Like a great segue to Morgan's.
Go through engineering. Any other questions for Brian before we? Morgan. Okay, Morgan.
Good evening. I provided an updated review for this project on the end of last month. And in that review, we discovered that we reviewed the previous traffic impact study and not the most up to date from Horrocks. It is true. ITE manual has storage units producing low traffic land use. I've spent the last bit of time looking over the most updated version of the transportation impact study, and my comments seem to be mostly addressed on my side from what was provided. They have included more detailed information on their turning counts, their level of service analysis, and turn lane warrants. Those are in that newest version of the traffic impact study. They've adjusted the growth rate from what I've seen, and that they have a right turn lane on State Highway 55, which ITD has approved. ITD did send in a memo approving their traffic impact study that was reviewed by them. I have not had a chance to send this back to Horrocks to ensure that their comments were addressed. That's one box that I still need to check on my side. They have been working on their stormwater report and grading. Most of my comments previously have been addressed. I have a few additional comments in that report, but they're pretty minor. The site's pretty large with a large retainage area in the front, as mentioned. And then the groundwater information, as Brian mentioned, they've adjusted their grading to be above that high groundwater level that they've seen reported so far. There's my overall analysis of the project.
Very good.
Thanks.
Commissioners, any other questions for Morgan? This time.
So ITD approves it, but the developer builds the turn lane.
Correct.
And does it impinge on the swale, the storage basin?
I didn't see where it was hindering that, based on what they've provided. I would have to look at it in more detail, but I don't remember that being a concern looking at their stormwater items.
You know, widen the road where they're storing all the water.
Yeah, there's a pretty large buffer right there right now, of landscaping.
Is there a road drainage area there that drains the water from the road or where does that go? Snow buildup and that kind of stuff, or is it even an issue?
Currently it just drains to that swale. I might have the land group verify that. But I would expect that it would follow the same pattern that it does today.
Any other questions for Ryan or Morgan before we go to public comment? All right. With that, we will open up for public comment. I do want to remind everybody you'll have 3 minutes. And please, since I'm pretty sure we're going to have a pretty good amount of comments. If somebody says the same comments that you are going to say, and if it's already been said, please just save us some time and that you agree with what the previous person has said. And so with that, we will go to anybody online or on the phone that wishes to comment. Lisa Beck, how about you first?
Thank you. Hi, this is Lisa Beck at 303 Colorado Street. I have a question, that not necessarily a comment, but I have a question regarding the fire station amenity that is proposed, and how it somewhat relates to traffic. Is it a manned fire station that is staffed, or is it just storage that's there and like with some of their extra apparatus? And so I noticed that the building is just 15 feet tall, I believe, and that might have been an old drawing. But are there going to be emergency calls coming from this, or is this just seasonal storage, just continuing their use that they have there, essentially already?
Lisa, we won't be answering questions now. After the comment section, the applicant will be able to come back to you. So we don't go question
No,
and
that's
answer this,
understood.
just to let you know.
Yeah. Yeah, that's understood.
Is there anything more, Lisa? I'm sorry.
No, thank you. It was more related to that amenity and use, and traffic potentially.
Okay, great. Thank you. Anybody else online or on the phone that wishes to comment? Again, you may need to hit *6, unmute yourself. Yeah, online or on the phone that wishes to comment. All right. Well, I don't really have a good list here. Anybody here in the audience that wishes to comment regarding this application? Oh, is the list over? Oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead, ma'am, if you'd like to.
May I go first?
Yeah, you raised your hand first, so I get the list. There.
I'll let the audience know I take full responsibility for the packet fudge up, but you remember that I'm a person. Keep your comments at least like neutral towards me as a person.
Yeah. Yeah, name and address.
My name is Becky Ryan. I live at 1200 South Sampson Trail. 3 things to comment on. One, the fire station issue. Disingenuous. This has still persists in being called the fire station. A fire station can be built only following a public election bonding process, just like you follow for building new schools. It has to go before the public in a general election and follow a variety of public involvement processes. Do not call this a fire station. That process has not begun and it's not successful. Secondly, wildlife corridor is a term that is not even used anymore in wildlife biology. I talked a long time with the Technical Services Bureau at Idaho Fish and Game. They said they don't even use that term anymore, and they use a different term which requires extensive wildlife coloring, mapping, and rarely occurs. There's one in eastern Idaho he told me about. You don't have wildlife corridors next to a highway in a zoned residential neighborhood. Please don't use that term anymore. It's not capable of being a wildlife corridor. It does not exist. Let's see, I must have more time. Traffic flow. I also talked to Idaho Department of Transportation, Brian Duran. And even though they give preliminary approvals for things as they come in, it in no way means that the Idaho Department of Transportation will or does approve the process and the designs that go forward. It takes time. They will coordinate with the county and the city, and they will consider this proposal, this change to State Highway 55, which is getting busier all the time. We know it, in context of the larger change that Idaho Department of Transportation is looking at for Highway 55 around McCall. There's a lot going on and many moving pieces. This is not a done deal. Fourthly, the residential nature of this neighborhood, and it is zoned residential, becoming only more residential all the time. Just across the street from me, there are 3 new houses going in. They're not building businesses. It is a zoned residential neighborhood. There are more houses going in. This will egregiously change the nature of the neighborhood. Did I just hear a little signal?
Nope, that wasn't mine. You still got another minute.
Okay, I'm looking here. I just this. Yeah, I encourage the commission to spend time with the Idaho Department of Transportation, the wildlife folks, and of course us, the residents in the neighborhood who have invested and planned our homes with the assurance we thought of our zoning. We thought it would remain intact. This is a long time. It's a long process. We're all tired of it. And the reason it's going on a long time is because it simply does not fit. It's the round peg in the square hole. The round peg fits somewhere else, but it doesn't fit where it's proposed, and it never will. And I thank you for your time.
All right. Now with that, I will go down the list I have. So we have Ann Carr, or Annie Carr.
Hi, I'm Ann Carr, and thank you for letting me speak. I live in Carefree neighborhood, which is just south of this area that we're talking about. I don't usually take a issues.
Excuse me, Ann. Ann, I'm sorry. We do need your address for the record.
14023 Hideaway Court.
Thank you.
Okay, I mostly just make sure that the air I breathe, the water I drink, food I eat, and the friends I make are good. Things that happen down the road that affect other people that don't keep me up at night usually don't get my attention. However, this is one issue that really rattles my cage. How about a little history of the CUP? Now, I don't know a whole lot about it, and somebody else just described it, but I'm going to kind of sum it up. The first time it came up, the P&Z board denied it in a 2-to-1 vote. They said it didn't meet the 12 requirements of a CUP. That should have been the end of it. But no, the applicants requested another hearing to see if the board would reconsider their denial, and they got it. Why the board didn't stand by their original decision was unclear. What the board said was that the applicant needed to submit a new CUP, and this time they needed to provide more data on the impact of both the traffic in the area and on the groundwater. The truth is that the applicant's original data showing the impact on these 2 issues was flawed. It was based on input that was irrelevant or applicable to national data and not necessarily to McCall's unique situation. And in general, it appeared to be heavily biased in order to sway the board in the applicant's favor. Fast forward to today, yes, a new CUP has been submitted. New data on the traffic and groundwater has been provided, 353 pages of it. And then on the day before the hearing, or maybe 2, they submitted another 45 pages of data. Note about this data. One neighbor repeatedly stopped by the office of one of the P&Z members asking for the new data on the traffic and groundwater and was unsuccessful in obtaining it. This person downloaded a meeting packet repeatedly and failed to find that data. Why was it such a secret? Another diligent neighbor has spent many, many hours in all sorts of weather trying to verify the data obtained by the experts hired by the applicant. The results of his effort have determined that much of that data is inaccurate and was gathered on days in which the traffic and groundwater situations are nowhere near what the actual situation would be if or when this storage facility would be built. At the last minute, another 45 pages of data showed up right before the hearing for this CUP was to take place, Were the people affected by this data given ample time to read, digest, and verify and be able to discuss it? Not unless they are speed readers and don't have anything to do but devote the past 24 hours to doing just that. The reason I'm concerned about this CUP is that from my knothole, it smells like there's something rotten in Denmark. Not accepting the board's first decision, resubmitting more data that is no more accurate or complete than the first set, and then at the last moment, tossing in more data when nobody has time to digest it, just reeks to me. It appears to me that the applicant is trying to fool the board into allowing something into the McCall environment that we will long regret if it is approved. Please do what you did in the beginning.
Stop. 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 It was good timing now. Just saying, stop. Okay. Next we have either Carl or Liz Rucola.
Rucola. I live at 550 Elo Road, right up the road from where this project is proposed. And I wish to voice my total opposition to the proposal for many reasons. I totally agree with everything Becky said and Mrs. Carr. They pretty much said what I have here on my little list. But one thing I did want to bring up was that we can't realistically just pack up and move if this goes through, nor should we be forced to endure this huge storage complex that really shouldn't be there just because a commercial outfit wants to come in and make some money and, kind of wreck our lifestyle. What kind of message would this send to other companies and commercial entities that are hoping to swoop in on these same kind of rural residential areas? I mean, what are we sending? What kind of a message? You're going to let them come in too? So I just wanted to point that out. And the last time you guys heard this, you denied it. And I really think the reasons for the denial still stand. The standards for a CUP don't measure up. It's not harmonious with the character of the neighborhood or with the appearance of the existing neighborhood. It will detract from the value of our properties. So there's a negative economic impact. Traffic will increase much more than the traffic study showed. This is a safety issue. It's going to create a lot of road noise and congestion at the Elo and Sampson Road intersection. Please reject the CUP proposal by Stewart. Help us preserve our quality of life by keeping this residential estate zoning in place. Thank you for listening.
Carl, will you also speak or you?
I agree with what's been said so far, sir.
Okay, great. Thank you. All right, go to Ken Strode.
I'm Ken Strode, 935 South Sampson, right across the street. And I just want to say one thing. What's this 6 months, a half a year, 3/4 of a year of water study? That's quite a scientific study, less than a year. I think it needs to be at least 5 to 10 years to get an accurate water study on this. But I'm definitely against the enlargement of the storage. Thank you.
All right, we got, I think that's Jenny Bison? Or Jerry? Oh, Jerry, sorry.
I'm Jerry Bison, 905 South Sampson. Do I understand that right, that those buildings are going to be 15 feet higher, give or take?
Again, it'll be answered after the comment.
Okay. And then I've lived there for 50 some odd years, and I've had water there's another hand dug well in my basement. And it's 9 feet deep. And I've had water in that well almost to come out, and it's probably 4 foot below ground level. It just don't seem right that, and I was curious to, they dig down and my hand dug well that I irrigate out of goes dry. What is going to happen with that? I got water rights over anything in the neighborhood. So, and then it's been 2 weeks ago, Saturday, I sat in the yard drinking a pop, and nothing has been said about the Sampson Elo intersection. And there was 200 rigs went through that intersection in an hour. Between 3 something and 4 something in the afternoon. So I'm curious of what, if anything's going to be come out of the study on intersections, the highways, the main thing, and the intersection there hasn't been spoke of. So, thank you.
All right. I think this is Kim Apperson.
Thanks for your time. Kim Apperson, 415 South Sampson Trail. And so the existing storage facility is a non-conforming use that, my understanding, shouldn't be expanded under the comprehensive plan that was adopted in 2018. And that property is residential. It should remain residential, low density development in that area. And this continued industrialization of the scenic routes is ridiculous. This development should continue to be low density. This place, don't get stuck going down the rabbit hole with this applicant on this application and others, because it's fundamentally in the wrong place. They can tweak it, they can buffer it, they can put pretty facade on the buildings, but it's still a huge industrial use in a residential zone. It just does not fit. I think the county commissioners were led down this rabbit hole. That's why they come back with you with some very specific requests. Look at the groundwater. Look at the traffic study. And they can tweak those things. They can make a very beautiful industrial project, but it's still in the wrong place. Don't let them do it. Don't kowtow to this tweaks, these little tweaks for something that just shouldn't be there. Thanks.
Hey, David Gallipoli. Oh.
Thank you. David Gallipoli, 405 Floyd. This application kind of reminds me of the movie, what's the movie? Groundhog Day. Yes, where the applicant is continuing to relive this application, and it's the same application. The one you unanimously denied the last time around. So they appeal it to the commissioners, and the commissioners want to kick the can down the road, and they send it back to you. It's not going to meet one of your 12-point criteria for the cut. I've read, unless you get really, really creative, it might squeak by with one, but I think it'll fail on the rest of the 11. The fire station, it's not a fire station. I agree with Becky about that. So that's a disingenuous pitch to try to get something that is not about a fire station. It's about a storage facility. I also think you have to keep in mind that Idaho law is pretty specific that the property rights of one property owner should not impact the property rights of the many. And I remember when this application was going through the first time, there were a lot of neighbors that I talked to that contacted realtors that stated that if this facility was built and expanded, their property would lose value. So there'd be adverse impacts on those property owners that are adjacent to that property and the neighbors that live there. The other thing, the traffic study is an incredible flawed study. Maybe you saw some of the comments of the gridlock we had yesterday. I'm starting to call Farm to Market and South Sampson Trail alternate 55 because that's what it's turning into. In the last 3 years, our county commissioners and some of our approvals here will add 5,000 more vehicles to Valley County. They're not going to use 55. They're going to use alternative routes. They're going to use farm. We need a legitimate study before you continue to approve application after application because they have cumulative impacts that we're not thinking about, but we're experiencing. So please deny this. And yeah, please deny it. You did it the first time. It's not going to meet any of the 12-point criteria. So please deny it. Thank you.
All right, Larry Shea.
Larry Shake, 1612 South Sampson Trail, just down the street from this whole process going on. And I would like to voice my opinion about how important it is for you guys to deny it. Dave kind of touched on it. It's not going to meet the 12 points. And I think you are required to go back and look at those 12 points. I don't think any of the 12 points were covered under water or traffic, but compatibility. And I also think, and I agree with others that have talked about it, but the grandfather provision in your planning and zoning regs say that a grandfathered activity cannot be expanded or modified or transferred without complying to the rest of the grandfather requirements. And one of those is that you could restrict the use of that grandfathered use, but you couldn't expand it. One of the other things is that the proposed use can't be detrimental. Brian read these things all off very quickly to he knows them really well, but you guys didn't meet the 12 points that are listed in these things. And one of them says the density of the planned unit development, the PUD, as a whole has to have substantial conformity with the density of the underlying zone. The underlying zone is residential. So folks, you just keep looking and I applaud you of being, able to turn it down twice before the county got involved, but don't let the county push us around here. You have an opportunity to stand your ground. This is not going to make the 12 points, so deny this and let's move on with it. We're done. We're tired of it.
All right, Joey, Petrie.
Yeah, he had to leave for football game.
Oh, he left? Okay. Linda, you?
I agree with the whole thing that's been said. To deny.
Thank you. Rick Ryan.
I need to pick through my notes to see which I don't need to talk about now because a lot of it's been substantially covered. But I want to bring back the focus to the importance of.
Rick, I'm sorry to interrupt. I need your name and address for the record.
Rick Ryan, 1200 South Sampson Trail. And we've been there about 8 years now, 9 years. So the criteria that have been mentioned several times now, a building is only as good as the foundation that it's built on, and the foundation supporting this proposal doesn't exist. And for the reasons that folks have said, it's rural estate. It contemplates 5-acre lots with one family home, and
you're proposing 10 acres of paved pavement with storage units. And that is wholly inconsistent. I went back through the February 7th, 2023 statement of facts and law and decision. And I went through for the planning and zoning here, and then also went through the commissioner's letter of August 7th, 2023, and gleaned out what were the fatal errors? What's the rat in the punch bowl here? And it all boiled down to, it's just not that. The fact that this is a place-based problem is that rural estate on that acreage that they want to pave over is the foundation. And by definition, if you can't meet one of the 12 criteria, you must deny the approval, much like you did last year. So here's Groundhog Day. This is the good part of Groundhog Day, is you get another bite at the apple. Sorry about the mixed metaphor. And that, you know, the right decision is the one you made last time. And so I hope you will do it again this time. Thank you.
All right, Lacey Myers? Oh. Oh, okay. I'm guessing the same with Bob Schaefer and Tyson Calder. Okay. That makes that easy. Scott Harris, I think that's what it says.
Harris, 86 Ilka Lane, McCall, in the impact area. And Meredith, we're not going to beat you up. I've been trying to go over this data. We had a day to do that, but folks, you're not getting accurate groundwater data for one thing. That was one of the reasons why Valley County Commissioners rejected this study, because they tried to put it across based on a single analysis on December 1st, a single analysis. And Valley County said, we need more data. That's the lowest groundwater table of the year. I measured water on the pit, pit 4 is the one you're talking about. I measured that groundwater on May 8th and found it at 8 feet. The recording, however, shows it a depth of 15 feet on the same day. The engineers that contracted to do this also sent 2 letters, each including graphs of this very pit. When you compare these 2 graphs, the depths are widely different. That shows 10 feet on one and 15 feet on another. Another major reason why this was questioned by the county commissioners was they did not believe traffic directly in and out of the facility was accurately represented. This is done using generic national data for residential storage units. Then those formulas are applied. In this case, they were applied on 2 days of data. May 11th, 2023, which is the quietest time in McCall. It's still freezing. Businesses are closed. Seasonal homeowners won't arrive until Memorial Weekend, 3 weeks hence. Construction season won't begin for 3 or 4 more weeks. Storage facilities are heavily used by these groups, and they weren't using them because it was a quiet time. July 1st, 2023, the other day used was Saturday of 4th of July weekend. Fireworks were happening that night. Traffic is in gridlock. The town is clogged. We all know this. Construction is at a halt. No one is making necessary trips, much less to their storage units. It's impossible that increasing the volume by hundreds of these storage units is not going to have a greater effect than what they calculated from this very minimal data. Safety should be of the greatest consideration. The bogus traffic analysis concluded that the units will have little effect on traffic and safety. Hatch concludes the quote, the proposed use would have very little impact to traffic within the neighborhood. How is this possible? This is all smoke and mirrors, folks. Let's put it to rest. By the way, it was mentioned that there was commercial use on 3 sides of this property, including an RV on the map, an RV repair facility. There's no RV facility there. Site drainage for this site controls a basin that drains all the way to Mountain Life.
Joy Murphy.
Hi, I'm Joy Murphy. I live at 1280 South Sampson Trail. A couple of things I've discussed at previous meetings, and I find it appalling that we're having to say the same thing again, because we're talking to a wall when we do this discussion. Last year, I went to all of the county meetings, and one of the commissioners told this group to get a water study that showed the spring runoff, and they did not. They ignored them until finally this was sent back here. Because I think they're thinking, since so many of us are senior citizens, by the time they put the last application in, we're going to be gone. And there's going to be me or somebody here. And I really think it's disrespectful. Okay, let me tell you what my concerns were, and I addressed at least two meetings last year. Traffic and water. But I'm going to add to it this year because I looked at some of this stuff that they submitted, and it shows that buildings are between 19.6 at the highest point feet and 22 feet, which seems a little bit obtrusive. It seems to be something that can be seen when trees are built around it, and especially from people higher up. I think somebody said 12 feet. No, 19.6 feet to 22 feet, depending on which building it is. They're also gigantic. They're monstrosities. Okay, so anyway, let me talk about the aesthetics first, and then I'll get into my main issues. First of all, this thing, I noticed that you talked, Becky, about the fire department. I wrote in my opposition, if the fire department's going to be there, it should be denied just on the matter of that being there without having approval. The second thing that bothered me about this is how big it is. And we have the historic maintenance of the berm and the screen of plants that goes around the original storage units. So if you want to see what our future will be, let's look back and see how that's been maintained by this company. Because it hasn't been maintained. You can see the eyesore from 55, and you can see the eyesore when you go to church. So that's bothering me quite a bit. Now let me get to traffic. I'm a retired teacher, and I brought up at least 2 times last year my concern that this borders South Sampson's Trail, and we have a school there. And it was never, ever, there's not one thing that I read in this proposal that talks about South Sampson Trail. I think they think magically everybody is going to come through a light and on 55 to go into this place. And they don't think that anybody's going to drive on South Sampson Trail. So I brought up my concern about kids, because one of the things kids do, if they do look 2 ways, they look at the first car, but they don't look at the trailer behind it. So kids running around back from school or school activities in the summer or whatever, they're in a hazardous place, because all of a sudden you have a bunch of people driving with trailers behind their cars or their trucks, bringing their work things in and all of that other stuff for the construction business. Okay, and I did look at the write-up. I'm not sure that the write-up that they submitted is actually up to date, because I've heard so many different things about water studies and traffic studies that I don't think that what I read might not even be current, but they didn't take the time to fix it. They said there's 43 people going in and out between April and May. And they said that will go up to 129. However, they don't go and they just double it or whatever decimal they multiplied by, but they don't go into saying anything about the seasons. And the seasons affect how many people are here and how many boats have to come out and how many campers have to come out and how many construction workers. The other thing is the water. Last year in July, I said water. Okay, and the last thing is animals, insects in that pond that could get us sick.
Thank you.
Health is one of the issues.
Dominic, I got you here, but I'm guessing you're gonna do the last item? Or did you want to?
No.
Yeah, okay, then you're for the next one, okay. Is there anybody else here in the audience that would like to speak that's not on the list? Is there anybody else on the phone or on the computer that would like to speak regarding this item? Again, you may need to hit *6 to unmute yourself. The last call for anybody that wants to speak on this item. All right, with that, we'll close the public comment. Okay. Jeff, did you want to respond?
Some commissioners. Questions from the neighbors.
We can't hear back here.
I'd like to touch on a couple of questions from the neighbors that came up. One was in regards to the fire station. And the owner may come up to clarify if he disagrees with me, but I'll speak on his behalf. In talking with the fire department, the intent is to construct a fire station. That fire station will be used as it is currently approved and used today, which is a satellite station for the fire department to store their vehicles. The intent of building a fire station is to create a shell with capacity for a fully manned fire station in the future, so much as it goes through the proper process with McCall to do so. But the structure, the infrastructure, the capacity, the septic system for that fire station will be constructed. It is then up to the population to decide to utilize it beyond a satellite fire station, which is what is being utilized today. Any questions, commissioners?
Today, it's just a storage unit. They store extra equipment.
Correct. And so we would be.
So it's a storage unit.
So Commissioner Petty, we would be constructing a fully complete fire station with multiple bays and a section for office space, which can be heated, which has septic, which has the capacity to be manned in the future after it has gone through that process. In the meantime, the fire station does intend to use that as storage for their satellite fire station, which is what they're capable of doing as soon as we build it.
So you're gonna build the whole thing out when the project, if the project goes through, when the project starts, then the whole fire station?
Commissioner Moth, our intent is to build in the infrastructure for that. As far as the walls for the office, as the fire marshal wants to hold off on that portion until they understand how many offices they want. We would be stubbing the facility for heat, for electricity, for sewer. But we would be proposing to this commission, unless you want it fully built out, which we could do that, wait until that's approved through that process.
I was just wondering if was that gonna be the case?
Do an
Okay,
official fire station.
good.
And then the fire department owns the building? It's at that, so one of the other comments was that has to go through a bonding process and a vote. So then you would deed that building to the fire department?
Commissioner Petty, I believe I can't answer that because that would be up to the city and the fire department and the general public to determine if they want to do that or if they want to do a land lease like you would do with the post office. The other question was in regards to heights of the building. We have the capacity to adjust those based on design review criteria and comments from both the neighbors as well as this commission. Along the east side of the property, we can lower those as low as like 7 feet. Right now we're at 10 feet is what we're proposing. Towards the western side of the expansion, that's where we would be proposing a 20 foot structure, which also if you see through that section, it actually has a split level design. And so we would be at the current level of the facility. And then as the grade slope down in that building section, we would then be taller. So that measurement is from the existing grade up 20 feet, not from the current grade up 20 feet. In regards to traffic, our traffic study was put together last July 2023, provided to the Valley County Commissioners, and then resubmitted with this application in April. That has not changed. Concerns about groundwater as well, which I would like Lacey to present on.
Lacey, can you talk louder as well?
So groundwater has been being evaluated by Atlas since October of 2023, and they have 2 test pits that have continuous monitoring devices in them. So they have been taking continuous groundwater monitoring data since October 21st of 2023 through now. And on June 28th of 2024, they sent an updated letter saying that they suggest to continue monitoring for 1 more month. So we should be completing the monitoring soon. And that's because they want to collect the spring runoff high. So they're trying to capture the highest groundwater, and they believe that should happen by now. If that has changed, they'll, reach back out. Atlas is a professional engineering firm, and if they don't feel like we've hit the peak groundwater elevations, they will continue to monitor until we do so. But based off of their recommendations, we should have hit that. And again, we'll continue to look at that information as it comes in. Test pit 1 is in the existing swale on the west side of the site, and test pit 4 is on the northeast corner of the site. And we have adjusted our grading to accommodate the groundwater depths, and the buildings were raised by 3 feet, not 15, in order to stay out of groundwater. And that's best management practices, is to keep the foundations out of the groundwater, and that's what we'll do. This is typically what we see on all of our projects, is having groundwater data that captures the spring high elevation. It's what we do for all of our projects. So, and we use Atlas often, and they're, again, a professional engineering firm with licenses.
We've been groundwater for like not even a year yet.
We started
How would you know that you've reached the peak or not reached the peak yet?
when the graph starts dropping again.
But is that the same everywhere that you when you measure groundwater? I mean,
not necessarily across the country, but definitely in this area. Yes. And per Atlas's recommendation, which they work in McCall often, they work in Valley County. We go off of their recommendation, and they recommend that we capture the spring runoff.
what do they suggest? They suggest to do a year or not do a year?
They suggest to based on historical data of this area, and Atlas is this is from Atlas's report dated June 28th, 2024. Based on historical data of this area and Atlas's understanding of this area, seasonal groundwater highs usually take place during the late spring to early summer runoff season. Based on the data collected to date, it appears that the seasonal high may have occurred through late May to early June. Atlas recommends that at least 1 more month of groundwater monitoring be conducted to verify this assumption. And that was June 28th. So they wanted to monitor through July to verify that we hit the peak, and you would see that we hit the peak based on the graph starting to drop. And that's.
What if you had a giant rainstorm, and would that change it? Just hypothetically.
No, not typically. It's
Not really. It would.
driven by the snow runoff here.
So this last winter was not a historically big snowfall winter, correct? So you could assume that in a 14-foot snow year, those groundwater levels will be higher.
Atlas has been doing work in this area for years, and all we can do is use their expertise from the report and what they recommend for this area. But it is typical to do groundwater monitoring within the year that, in the year leading up to the construction application process.
So next spring, you start digging foundations and finding groundwater's at 5 feet. Then you just raise the buildings some more.
We would have to get into that as that happens.
Can you speak up, please?
Sorry, we would have to look into that situation as it happens.
I can't believe that you wouldn't have to have a year's study on something as important as groundwater when you're talking about the foundations of those buildings out there. I mean, you know, I don't know, I'm not a hydrologist and I don't know how they calculate all that, but it seems like you'd have to have at least a year study because last year we didn't get any snow and basically up here until the end of February. So, you know, it's every year's different. And it used to amaze me that you could calculate, well.
Yeah, Tony, it's pretty standard.
Yeah, I guess.
Most of the timeframes are pretty standard.
Yeah.
So.
Soil versus the on-site soil. There's quite a bit of room in between State Highway 55 and the on-site soil. State Highway 55, it has its own soil, and then there's actually a berm that comes up. It's the on-site soil. So there's a berm that is in between the two, and the expansion of the road does not change the existing drainage pattern for State Highway 55. And we'll be sure to work with ITD to make sure that they approve our design.
Chairman Lyons, there was one kind of late neighborly comment that I would also propose a potential solution. There were some concerns that if we're adding additional pedestrian access and pedestrian pathways along Sampson and Elo Trail, that's going to generate or promote additional pedestrian traffic. So an additional amenity that we would suggest proposing would be pedestrian flag crossings at those locations that we could install in order to help eliminate some of the concerns similar to what you see downtown. So for any other questions.
Commissioner, please, folks. Commissioners, any other questions for the applicant at this time? Okay, thank you. Yeah. Commissioner, any other questions for staff?
I've got a couple, actually. First one is, in this application, what were the ones that we can decide on versus what were the ones that we need to recommend?
Mr. Rock, you are the deciding body on the design review and scenic route review applications, and then you will be making a recommendation on the planned unit development and conditional use permits.
Awesome, thank you. That was the first one. The second one is if we do determine that we should continue this to give us more time to process data or whatever, when would you recommend we continue to?
There's a whole slew of meetings in our near future. I think we can fit it in any of them. They're all fairly full agendas. September is probably the least full at this point.
Okie doke. And my third and final question, I heard words such as non-conforming and grandfathered use, and I just wanted to check on the applicability of those terms to this application.
The existing storage facility does not have a conditional use permit and is therefore a non-conforming use. There is also landscaping, fencing, signage that is existing non-conforming that they're proposing to remedy with this application.
Awesome. Thank you.
Any other questions for staff or the applicant before we close the public hearing?
When you presented to Board of County Commissioners, you basically just represented our, because I wasn't here, but this commission's denial.
Yes, generally speaking, I present the staff report plus the findings that you guys have made and the deliberation as to why that came to be.
Can you, I did go back and look at those findings of fact. How readily accessible is that?
Which findings of fact are we?
From the denial from this.
From the planning and zoning.
Yes. Just to see how much is, if anything has changed.
You're not talking about like the county, you're talking about this here.
Yeah.
You jump to page 424 of your meeting day.
Real quick, commissioners, while Dave is looking and reviewing that, is there any other questions for staff or the applicant? All right, we will be on hold. Let Dave have a chance to review that for a minute. Dave, do you want us to take a quick break and give you a chance?
It's fine. I
Oh.
mean, it looks like we just
Okay.
went through the same 12 conditions, right? Yeah.
Okay, so once again, any other questions for staff or the applicant before we close public comment? Or, excuse me, public hearing on this one. All right, with that, I make a motion, we close the public hearing.
Second.
We have a motion and a second, all in favor?
Yes.
Aye.
Aye.
All opposed? All right, hearing none, the public hearing has been closed. All right, commissioners, deliberation, discussions.
You know, I look at the discussion of the denial the last time. And of the recommendation for CUP, the denial of the CUP, and it talks about being harmonious and in accord with the general objectives. The other item number 3 also says the same thing, that it's harmonious. And then when I read the letters, it's been kind of a robust opposition to this from the neighbors. It is different in its use than most of that neighborhood. If you look across the street from this parcel to the north, there's a house. Kitty corner to the north is a house. There's a house directly to the east. There's another house directly to the east. There's a house directly south. And then to the west, there's a non-conforming use that we're now looking at again to expand that use. And it seems like up and down that road, Sampson Trail and Elo to the east, you have low density residential houses, right? And to me, between that and the neighbors' response again and again, and they've stayed in touch with the approval process and followed it through the county, and at every turn in the road has been vocal. And to me, that doesn't seem like it's harmonious. And that, those two items are probably the biggest reason I think that, and I wasn't in that meeting that recommended denial, but I agree with it, that it's not harmonious. Those were the biggest things. There are minor concerns about the groundwater in the area. I still think, when you're down there that close, I think about Jerry Bisom's irrigation well that he has across the street. When you cut into that hillside, what happens to that well? So, yeah, I think based on those first two items, talking about its harmony with the neighborhood and neighbors, right? So, those are kind of my general thoughts on it.
Dana, how about your thoughts?
Yeah, I completely agree. I mean, looking back to when it was first denied, I don't feel like anything has really changed. So I still feel like 5 of the 12 standards to meet the CUP requirements, it's not there. So I still don't feel like it should be approved.
Liz?
I agree with what everybody has said. I don't think it has substantially changed since the last time we looked at it. I am now additionally confused by the impacts to the groundwater and trying to wrap my head around those measurements versus like the depth of the footings versus how high would the buildings have to go, which would change the kind of view of how big this is. One of the other comments that was brought up kind of earlier in the public comment and ties to the lot size restrictions, the fact that this proposed development so greatly exceeds the standard lot usage for the area, I think makes it a hard sell that it could be harmonious with the environment around it. Yeah, those are my big takeaways.
Dave?
Yeah, I don't really see any way around the CUP conditions. But I also, our hands are tied a little bit on 55 with Valley County. There's big commercial industrial developments going up that get approved by the county. But it is a scenic highway, and I take cardboard to recycling every Tuesday, and you come down that hill, and there's just no way that a storage facility is a scenic highway amenity. It's not a place that it fits, in my opinion.
Well, I agree with Liz. I think the size of the actual operation is almost like an albatross. It's just too big for the site that it's on. And I can't really for the life of me figure out, I don't want to tell these people how to do their business, and I'm no expert at business anyway. But I don't know why they want this site so bad when they've got one of these in Cascade or Donley. They've got another one down in 10 Mile Storage in Boise that's huge. and a couple more in Boise. And I don't know why they're spending so darn much time trying to get this particular site at this particular location. I understand the economies to scale, being able to locate all your eggs in one basket, but it just seems like they've wasted a lot of time and energy and money, and including this body's, as far as the organization and the waste is concerned, and the Valley County commissioners. And for what? That money could have been spent in a different way, and they could have found another piece of property that's probably not very far from where their location is right now. That's more harmonious to the people that live around there. People have come in here time after time after time and complained about what this whole operation was doing out there or wanted to do. And I think it's just come back to roost. Like I said, I'm not trying to tell people how to run their businesses, but there's been a lot of money and a lot of reruns and a lot of engineers and a lot of people come through that represent these people that I don't have any idea what they spent in order to get this one location. And it's painfully obvious that most of the people that live around there and most of the people in McCall don't want it there and don't want them there either. So I'm at a loss to say that I understand their direction. That's all I got.
All right. Well, I do agree that it really hasn't changed from the last times we've looked at it. The water study or the traffic study and the water levels, analysis has really not made much of a difference. If anything, maybe more concerning, possibly with the water. With the zoning there, I think I mentioned it one of the first meetings that they scaled it down and then left a big enough parcel for a residential piece to pretty much end the creep. So, because if this goes, I can see property across the street. It's going to say, well, now that's there. The other properties that we looked up off Elo Road that talked about storage units, it's just going to keep on creeping. And I just don't think that's appropriate area. And it hasn't changed all the answers or the questions we had on this conditional use permit items that it won't satisfy them. And I know there's 5, 6 or so of them at least that it's not going to satisfy. Now we can certainly go down the list again, but again, I don't see any substantial change within the application that would change any of those items that we've discussed in the past. So I just don't see it incompatible in that area at this scope. So pretty much seems like we're all within that. I'm guessing we need to make motions on each individual item, correct? Or can we do the 2 and 2 since 2 and 2? Okay. Well, with that is open for a motion if we want to start with the design review and the scenic route that is our
Sure.
decision.
Yeah. I move to deny DR 2206 and SR 2204.
All right, we have a motion and a second. Ryan, can you do roll call or roll call?
Commissioner Rock,
Yes.
Commissioner Petty,
Yes.
Commissioner Wiltie. You're on mute.
I think that was a yes.
Sorry, yes.
Commissioner Pop,
Yes.
Commissioner Moss,
Yes.
Commissioner Lyons.
Yes. All right, motion carries.
I move to,
Chairman.
Oh,
I got a text from Bill. We should probably modify that motion to direct staff to prepare findings for the September 10th planning and zoning meeting.
okay. All right, Liz, you want to modify that to,
yeah, so moved.
okay. With it modified, do a voice count, everybody approve the modification?
Yes.
Yeah. Yes?
Yes.
Yes.
All right.
Is it September 12th or 10th?
10th, that's my bad on the staff report.
Okay.
Got it. Yes.
Okay. So we're good with that. All right.
All
Now,
right.
the next one is a recommendation to the county commissioners.
Right. Do we also need to delay that one, or can that one go straight through?
We'll also need the prayer findings for that as well.
Prepare.
Okay.
You have to do what? Fair findings, you say? Oh, okay.
2204, right, Brian?
Yes.
PUD.
PUD and CP.
I move to continue.
Nope. I don't think we're continuing it. Are we continuing it?
Agreed. Yep. Motion number 4 on your potential motions, except for September 10th, September 12th.
We're not continuing the meeting.
We'll continue it and direct staff to.
Oh, okay.
Oh,
okay.
Good. Move to continue PUD 2204, CUP 2204 to the September 10th, 2024 meeting. Direct staff to prepare findings of fact, conclusions of law documents, recommending the denial. The subject applications for the reasons identified in the commission's deliberations.
Second.
Yeah, motion and a second. Brian, let's do roll call.
Great, Commissioner Petty.
Yes.
Is Commissioner Pollitt seconded?
Rock seconded.
Yeah. You're next.
Yes.
Commissioner Pop,
Yes.
Commissioner Middlefaith,
Yes.
Commissioner Moss,
yes.
Commissioner Lyons.
Yes. All right, motion carries. All right, thank you. Give it a quick second here because I think we're gonna have a few people.
Yeah, Matt, snack.
Yeah.
Have a snack if you need a snack.
Have a snack or
Oh, yeah, yeah. Send something down here, would you?
Have a snack for people if needed.
I just want to eat popcorn next to the.
Oh.
You can-
You're surprised.
Throw me that jerky.
Get it. Here, that. Yeah, over
You
here.
can eat this quietly. Here.
Hey, let's throw you a snack.
I was thinking pizza, but that didn't happen then, huh?
I don't think you wanted to sit here and stuff.
No, you're right.
No, that's what I've been listening to.
Memorialize. Oh, okay. It's hard to hear back there. I know you guys have problems. I guess that's true. Have new meeting room. Yeah, well, that'll be.
That's.
For those of you online on there, we're going to be just a couple more minutes. As soon as Tony gets back, we'll re-go. All right, everybody. We had a crowd leave and had a little break, so we'll get yeah. We'll get moving to our next agenda item, which is design review 2410, shoreline 2406. This is to be determined Morgan Drive. So I make a motion, we open the public hearing.
Second.
I have a motion and a second. All in favor? Aye.
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 Aye. All right, with that, we have Dominic Galuza, I believe, here to make the presentation.
Everybody left. We have the Chambers residence proposed on Morgan Drive. This is a 18-acre parcel accessed off of Morgan Drive, kind of along the river below Valley View subdivision. They have owned this property for quite a few years. They are a 40 couple that has a house up here in McCall, had a house up in here in McCall for years. I first worked for them 15 years ago. Very, very good couple. They're up here all the time. We worked with Steve Curtis. You guys have worked with a lot. He brought a lot of houses around McCall and tried to draw a house onto this very, very unique shaped property with not a lot of buildable spots for as large as it is, and stay away from creeks, rivers, walking paths, and all the other unique topography and characteristics of this property. Although it does 7,800 square feet and it does seem like a lot of square footage, it is only a 4-bedroom home. It is a daylight basement with main level on top overviewing the river. And it's in the scheme of McCall homes, I would not say that this home is large or obese in any way, shape, or form. You can see by the renderings, it does sit up from the river. It actually, in reality, it seems like it sits almost a little higher off the river from that. There's a walking path that the Valley View subdivision used right along the river that crosses Williams Creek and kind of goes towards Sheep Bridge and in through Rivers Crossing. And we plan on totally leaving that and leaving access to that. And there's also another walking path that goes up Williams Creek into the top of Valley View subdivision. And we plan on improving that and giving them a better walking trail around the house while these guys kind of keep some privacy. So I think this house meets design criteria, and I think it's gonna look pretty good. No one can really see it. A few paddle boarders going by, but like it doesn't. I don't think there's any other house that you can actually see this house from. When you stand on site, you look into I'm sorry, I'm blanking on it. The one the subdivision. Yes, and you can't see any of those homes, so they're pretty private back in here. But I guess I'll take any questions, concerns, thoughts, answer whatever I can, and I have all the staff's comments, and we tried to take care. I think we took care of almost half of them today, and we'll have the rest of them taken care of here pretty shortly. And looking forward to building this home.
Commissioners, any questions for Dominic?
Acre property, but the house sits on about 2 of those acres, or
Disturbed ground after all said and done, is just over half an acre, driveway, house and septic. And there's no wetlands in there. It's, you can see the first site plan, it has all the high water marks of the river and Williams Creek, and you can see how our driveway stays out of high water delineation, and the home meets code to stay away from high water mark.
Building height 35 feet, 8 inches.
3410. Yeah.
Okay.
We did a little work on that. We had
I know when to shut up. Yeah, all right.
So we dealt with that today. We had a slight measuring discrepancy between the architect and staff, and we looked at it and said, hey, it's easy to take care of. And
I know when I'm beat, don't you see, you can change subjects. I get it.
I saw some comments on the Valley View kind of access, and that's been addressed.
That's the, so this property Valley View has an easement that comes from on top down to that walking path. And there's an old logging road that we plan on building through. And it kind of Z's around and is all funny and doesn't make a whole lot of sense. And we're going to put a boulder gravel walking path that goes from where their easement starts down to the river. And Jim has signed off on a agreement, and it's currently being notarized and made legal with the president of Valley View subdivision, and that's all been taken care of. And I think we've even got everything except for the final legal document to staff.
Okay. Commissioners, any other questions for Dominic at this point? Okay, thank you. Ryan, staff report.
All right, thank you. Yes, this is a design review and shoreline application for a residence just south of Rivers Crossing subdivision. It's probably one of the more complicated sites in town, I would say. It is contains floodplain wetlands, the shoreline buffer up to the Fayette River, the access easement from Valley View subdivision, and then another 10 acres off of that next. The applicant is doing a good job of working around all of these things. There are several conditions of approval regarding getting the floodplain work dialed in, making sure that there are no upstream impacts as a result of the construction of the driveway and bridge over Williams Creek. There are no wetland impacts or no wetlands identified by the report within the disturbance. The house and setback, at least at 2 feet off as well. Big structure, they're doing 3 stories and quite a few different roofline variations of that nature to minimize the bulk of it. And I think the most important thing is just siting it up in the trees away from the shoreline as well. And I think siting it well is getting to go. Minimizing the bulk of the structure. And with that, I'll stand for any questions.
And I'm pretty sure it doesn't affect it, but I know the piece of county land that's to the north of it, there's an easement through that to the city land that's to the south of that little 6 acre piece or 3 acre, whatever it is. House seems way far on the other side, so there's nothing that affects that.
Access easement to our little chunk of property is on the far opposite end.
Yep, that's what I thought. So the very far end, so nothing, there's no need. Commissioners, any other questions for Brian?
Not for me.
Okay, Morgan.
So my comments probably aren't in your packet since I sent them right before this meeting. So in my review, it's pretty general. I had a few comments that should be addressed before final engineering approval. When we spoke with the applicant team and their engineer, we discussed the need for a geotechnical report so they can get the design for the foundations of the bridge structure dialed in. And ensure that there's no groundwater issues with the septic location, but I saw that there also was a septic permit approved by Central District Health in the file, so that the groundwater level might not be an issue for them, where they're proposing their septic location. I think generally we just need more information regarding the bridge crossing and what that looks like, and that also goes into the floodplain review, and the no rise certification. We're gonna work with Bowen Collins and Associates, who also does our water modeling. They do floodplain reviews. They're gonna help us in that no rise certification review when we get all the information for that. Stormwater comments, I had general comments regarding the calculations that were used in the report. And then just a few questions on where like the foundation drains are daylighting. Yeah, and then I just had some red lines on their plans. And that's generally my review. Please let me know if you have any questions.
And commissioners, any questions for Morgan?
Is the issue?
I am not sure about the fire department. Do you know, Brian?
They submitted a comment that there will need to be a hammerhead, meeting their specifications within 150 feet of the end of the driveway, I believe.
Is it a condition? Right.
There are conditions that they need.
That's all.
All right, any other questions for staff before we go to public comment?
The HOA has approved the change with the walking path.
To be clear,
We have it in writing.
Yes.
there's writing, and the walking path currently does not follow their platted easement location. So it is going to be relocated.
Back where it's supposed to be.
Right. Well, I'm not sure if it's actually going to work. It's supposed to be, but they'll need to provide the easement if they do. But
Okay.
Any other questions for staff at this point? All right, with that, we'll open up for public comment. Is there anybody online or on the phone that wishes to comment regarding this application? You may need to hit *6 to unmute yourself.